It'll be a balance between what protecting the ecosystem is all about and protecting the tomb, the shrine that this place symbolizes. Aloha.
Oh, I was going to ask you for a big hug, but I couldn't get one anyway.
Big hug.
I thought maybe,
Big hug. Let me give this thing.
I thought maybe that you wouldn't want to hug an ugly old man.
Oh, I do want it.
Carl Carson was a 20-year-old sailor on the Arizona the day she went down. He decided to come back to Pearl Harbor when doctors told him he didn't have much longer to live.
Be able to come back. Well, I lost a lot of good, dear friends over there. It's just awful hard to even think about it. I almost lost my own life. I hope I can make it over there all right. Get there. Yeah, okay. I need a little support. Well, I was out on deck doing the morning chores. All of a sudden, there's a plane come along, and didn't pay much attention to it because planes were landing at Fort Island all the time. And all of a sudden, the chips started flying all around me, and there was a plane that was strafing me. And somebody hollered, "It's the damn Japs, get under cover." Bomb went off. I learned later it was back by turret number 4, about where I've been working about 10, 15 minutes before. And evidently it knocked me out, ruptured both my lungs, and I got smoke inhalation, and all the lights went out. I don't know how long I laid there, but when I woke up, there was no panic down there or anything, but there was smoke and water knee deep. I run into a friend of mine that he was crying and asking me for help, and I looked at him in horror. And the skin on his face and his arms and everything was just hanging off like a mask or something. And I took hold of his arm. Skin all came off from my hand. And there was nothing in this world I could do for that boy. And that has bothered me all of my life.
Bob Ballard has spent the entire mission searching the flats outside the harbor, without finding any sign of the lost midget son.
This is a mile. Okay. So what we're going to do is we're going to drop you down here at the base, or comfortably out.
Now he's turning his attention to the steep coral escarpment running roughly parallel to the shore, an area he calls the Wall.
In an expedition like this, you have to put your mind in the mind of the commander of the submarine, because his actions are going to define the size of the search area. What he does at that moment is going to tell you how big a search area you have to have. Clearly, if he was killed outright, then you didn't have to put yourself in his mind at all, because he's dead, and he's going to be right where they say he sank. But if he's still alive, he's going to then take certain evasive actions, and you have to then say, well, if I were that person, what would I do? And there were two options he had. One was to continue forward into Pearl Harbor, or the other was to turn and run for the high seas.
If the midget made a run for the high seas and sank farther out, there's no hope of finding it in the remaining time. But if it had continued toward the harbor, Ballard's team might stand a chance, with the help of their own miniature submersible.
All the Harbour's on the other side, Mark.
All righty, so you're well, I'll be talking to you over the rain. Nice guys. Head north. Turn left.
The one disadvantage of using a submersible is that Ballard's team won't be able to see what the sub-pilot is seeing during the dive. They'll have to rely on his descriptions over the radio and look at a videotape later.
That makes sense. Yeah, he's moving
Over to your port, looks like the area over there.
In the control room, all anyone can do is listen to the squawk box.
Yeah, Mark, give us maybe like 15. I want to try to really nail this tree.
They just reported finding a pile of batteries, and this submarine was a lot of batteries. So, starting to look like, smell like, but we're not sure.
Then the sub-pilot spots a torpedo.
Did he say? Right where it should get interesting, and it is getting interesting. He's picked up a torpedo and debris right in the area where we'd expect the submarine to impact it with the wall.
Ballard feels they are getting close, but they can't be sure of anything until they retrieve the deep worker and take a look at the videotape. December the 7th, 8:35 a.m., and the beginning of a brief 20-minute lull in the action. The first stories of individual acts of heroism began to make the rounds. One of them was about a mess attendant on the West Virginia named Dory Miller. Miller had carried the wounded captain of his ship to safety, then taken up a machine gun and shot down at least 2 Japanese planes. What made the story remarkable is that Dory Miller had never handled a machine gun, much less trained on one, because he was black, and like all African Americans in the 1941 Navy, restricted to the lowest ranking jobs. "14 men received America's highest military award, the Medal of Honor, for their heroism at Pearl Harbor, but Dory Miller wasn't one of them. He got the Navy Cross instead. Pearl Harbor, 8:55 a.m. The seas were still boiling with smoke and flame when the second wave of the Japanese attack struck the island. But this time, the Americans fought back. By 10 o'clock, it was over. The second wave of attackers headed back to their carriers, leaving behind a shattered Pacific fleet.
With that nation.
On the mainland, Americans were stunned by the news they were hearing from Pearl Harbor.
And dastardly attack by Japan on Sunday, December 7th.
President Roosevelt addressed the Congress the following day.
A state of war has existed between the United States and the Japanese Empire.
And by December the 11th, the United States was at war with Germany and Japan, plunging it into a conflict that would forever change its place in the world. It's the final day of the search, and Ballard has had his machines in the water for hours. But he's not hopeful about the outcome.
We're in the final throes of this expedition. I mean, today is the last day. We have 2 subs going in the water right now, but it doesn't look good because we've looked at all the high priority sites and we haven't found the midget submarine. We're now out in the very low priority areas, and that can go on forever because it's a big ocean. So I'd be very surprised if we succeeded today.
Deep Worker returns from its pass at the wall and is hoisted out of the water for the final time.